As an academy owner, you work hard to build trust with your students, their parents, and your community. But trust isn't something you claim, it's something you prove and earn. That's where Academy Safe comes in. We help academies like yours stand out with verified safety standards. Background checks for all staff, U.S. Center for Safe Sport certification, concussion training, defibrillators on site, CPR, first aid and AED certification, security cameras, rank and lineage checks, and verification of business insurance. Join the trusted martial arts registry that's redefining safety throughout North America. Lead by example. Show parents you're accredited with Academy Safe.
Hello, and welcome to My Empty Hands, a podcast about the martial arts, usually focused on Kenpo, but we have love for all the martial arts around here. As always, I am Reggie Darden, and I have another wonderful guest with me today, Tyler Duda, and we're going to get into his story and his journey of how Kenpo found him, and whatever other rat holes that we get onto, we'll talk about that as well. As always, I start things off with giving a little bit of my background. I train in multiple arts at this point, American Kenpo, Hapkido, Capoeira, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I also have some experience in Taekwondo and did a little boxing. So I try and stay well-rounded and entirely too busy for all the things that I do, but hey, I make it work. I have fun, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So we're going to go ahead and turn things over to my esteemed guest here, and to go ahead and tell us how did Kenpo find you? How did the martial arts find you? Where did it all begin? And we'll just run from there.
Well, Kenpo, I kind of fell into Kenpo unintentionally. When I was in high school, one of my friends trained, and he got his black belt when he was 16. We went to school, a tech school after high school together, and towards the end of our schooling, we were talking about it, and the school he went to, when you got your black belt, there's a 1-year probationary period that you had to continue to train before you got your certificate. So we were talking because after he got his black belt, he trained for a few months, and then he got tied up in football and school and technical college and stuff, and he didn't really continue training. So I was asking him, I said, "Man, why don't you go back and finish that? You came all that way, and now you don't even have your certificate. You might as well go finish it." And he didn't really care too much, and he said, "You know what? I'll make you a deal." He's like, "If you go with me, I'll go back." And I was like, "Yeah, all right, sure." I didn't think, it'd been a few years at this point since he stopped training, so I didn't think there was any chance he was actually going to follow through. And then once we graduated, he's like, "All right, let's go." So I went to class with him, and the instructor there was this smaller, like 120-pound woman, and my buddy was a linebacker on the football team, and she was demonstrating some stuff, and she just put him in a wrist lock and kind of flipped him over, and I was like, "Oh, all right, that's kind of cool. Like, I'll give this a shot." And we trained for like a couple weeks, maybe a month, and then my friend was like, "Hey man, I'm moving down to Virginia with my girlfriend." I was like, "No, you're not. We're doing this, remember?" And he took off, but I had already kind of gotten hooked on it, so I just I stayed and kind of stayed with Kenpo ever since. Branched out a little bit and have worked in some I've done some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and some Krav Maga and stuff, and a little bit of Dutch kickboxing, Muay Thai type of stuff, but Kenpo's always been my base and my foundation. So it all kind of, I called his bluff, and I lost on that, but in the end it was a win, I guess, because it's been over 17 years now. So
Very nice. Now, does your friend still train or no?
Nope, he pretty much hasn't trained since. He never even finished his probation, and he like I said, he went for a few weeks, maybe a month, and then that was it. Once he moved, he never found a place down there that taught Kenpo. I think his kids are in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now. I'm not sure if he's actually tried that or not. He mentioned it, but I don't think he has.
Yeah, I always find it funny. A number of my previous guests have been in that situation where either they didn't want to train at all, or they were kind of drugged to a class by accident, and the person that brings them in doesn't stop training, and the guest not only continues to train, but then it becomes a significant part of their life and their career and livelihood. And so I always find that funny. Is in my journey, I've always been interested in martial arts and always wanted to get involved, and so I couldn't really imagine a world where where I wouldn't someone wants to bring me to a class and I'm not interested in that. But yeah, it happens way more than I would have expected. So very nice, very nice. And so with the so you're getting into the training. So what was the hook, the Kenpo hook that uh, really got you to stick with it?
So in retrospect, my thoughts are a little different, but at the time, it was the practicality of the system, which for the most part still stands. The training methods that they used at the school that I started at, I don't really agree with now, and I think that when I say the practicality of it, I was more taking their word for it than actually like testing it out and stuff. But it made sense. I've coming from a mechanical background and trade school and everything, I've always been a very mechanical learner, hands-on learner, and found mechanics and physics interesting. And on a system that's based heavily on physics and biomechanical aspects, it's just something that was easy for me to learn, easy for me to pick up. I understood it pretty well right out of the gate. I had a lot of ways to associate with things that I already knew mechanically from in automotive mechanical, automotive mechanicals or whatever. There's a lot of kind of correlation there and stuff. So it was easy for me to pick up. It was interesting, and then being somebody that's kind of like got ADHD and my mind's always going different places. There's kind of endless rabbit holes that you can go down in Kenpo. There it really is kind of like a bottomless pit of knowledge that you can chase after. So it's something that kept my attention as opposed to a lot of other things where I would get bored easily and kind of move on just because it's like, all right, I've got enough information here. That's not keeping my interest anymore. With Kenpo, there's always something to keep my interest. So I think that kind of expansive, that vast expanse of knowledge that you can chase after and those rabbit holes you can go down is kind of what really hooked me and kept my attention. Yeah.
Well, for sure. Yeah, I love that there's this just this infinite well of things that you can learn and do in Kenpo, and especially with just really customizing it for the individual. And there's exercise that I've talked about before with my instructor, where we'll just take just the first technique, a delayed sword, and just, oh well, how many things can we do with this technique? And of course we're all, oh, okay, you can do 4 or 5 or things, and it's like, no, there's hundreds, there's thousands of things. There's uh, practically an infinite amount of ways that we can alter the technique and play with it and graft it on other techniques and things like that. That we could spend all week, all month just working on just the first couple of techniques, and there's there's still plenty more to get into, and not even counting extensions and all these other things, but just some of the basic movements. There's so much that we can kind of build off of it. So I've
Yeah.
always enjoyed that.
Yeah, for sure. And like I got into it just because I haven't really I've had an interest in martial arts, but for me it's more self defense related, which is why I've kind of the other things I've studied have been Krav Maga and some Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I've never really been into the sport side of things, just the self defense aspect. But at the same time, like a lot of my friends are very big into you know patterns within Kenpo and category completion and all those aspects of it. And there's a lot of truth to that, though. Like once you learn to recognize patterns within Kenpo, you do realize that there are some master key techniques that just keep repeating and some patterns that keep repeating. And so like you say, when you say there's hundreds of things you can do with delayed sword, you start seeing delayed sword everywhere. It's and that is an interesting aspect. It's not something that I go as deep into as some of my friends do, but I think it's unavoidable when you're in Kenpo to kind of go down those rabbit holes, and it does get real interesting when you do.
So, with your training, I get the sense, and you kind of said it. So, I would say, I guess, pretty kind of early on in your training, you were, I guess, not sure the best way I want to word this. Maybe just say that you kind of questioned the training. Maybe not to say that it was bad training or anything, but like that. But you had questions, and you wanted to get those answered. So just kind of how did you kind of receive any pushback or anything? Or because I know a lot of people that train, they're just like, okay, this is the teacher, this is the black belt or whatever in charge, and whatever they say I do, and just kind of leave it at that. And I would say that many, and not just in Kenpo, but I would say that there are many people that train today that don't really look into the why. They're just the how, or a lot of okay, well, it's a new week. What's my next technique this week? And so I can just get collect them all, collect all the trading cards, collect all the technique training cards, so that I can just get my next belt. And they don't really kind of get a little bit deeper into the surface level. So just maybe can you talk a little bit about how that was for you coming up, asking that great question, why?
Yeah, so that actually is what led to me being removed from my first school. Is the first school I went to was very much like that, kind of collect your techniques and rank, and that was it. And I again, I always wanted to go down those rabbit holes and go deeper into understanding the system and the art of Kenpo. And it got to a point where I was asking questions that there really weren't any, so I had the instructor that ran the school and the instructor that owned the school, right? And the instructor that ran the school was a 4th degree. The instructor that owned the school claimed a 9th degree. And I would take lessons with the 4th degree, and she would teach me something, and then I'd go to the 9th degree and ask him for more depth in it. And they didn't really like that. I was told that I was questioning my instructor, and I was like, no, I want to understand this. I want to understand this deeply, and I later found out that it was, very much a lack of understanding of the system from them. He, the owner of that school, while he had decades in the martial arts, he didn't have that much time in American Kenpo. So his knowledge of this art was more limited than he wanted to admit, I think. So I was looking for a deeper understanding of the art. I was looking for more knowledge, and I was getting pushback, just, being told that, that's just how it's done. You shouldn't ask that. You shouldn't be questioning your instructor. So that's when I did get bored with it. And that's when a jiu-jitsu school had opened up in town, and I started cross-training some Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And when they found out about that, that was a problem for them. And they kicked me out of the school for it. They said that me cross-training in jiu-jitsu was disrespectful, and I wasn't loyal and all that stuff. So they kicked me out. So I was like, okay. And then, that school is very boxed off. Like he owned 2 locations, and we weren't even supposed to go to the other location. That's how closed off they were. There was no going outside tournaments or outside seminars or anything like that. And again, later on, I found out that's because he had a limited knowledge and didn't want us to realize that. So I didn't even realize how many other Kenpo schools there were in my area. And once I left there, I started looking around, and I found a bunch of other schools in the area. There's probably three or four in my immediate area, and there was 3 or 4 different lineages in the state that I could go train. And so I did. I kind of went from school to school and trained in different lineages of Kenpo. And the ironic thing is that most of those instructors had all trained under my first instructor previously. They all had similar falling outs and stuff, and then they went under different, high-ranked guys that were Parker black belts. And so I bounced around a little bit, and I went to all these different lineages, and still none of them, and this is no fault to any of them, they weren't claiming ridiculous high rank and stuff, but none of them had quite the knowledge, the information that I was really looking for. So I eventually met Larry Tatum at a seminar, and he invited me out to his school for his Heart of the Art event, and went out to California. And out there I met a bunch of great Tatum guys that had knowledge that I wanted. They were a little more open-minded than the school owners that were around here. And so I started traveling to Philadelphia and New Jersey to train with some of those guys. And that is when I really started to go down some deep rabbit holes and really get a deeper understanding of the art. And that really changed me as a Kenpoist. It changed my whole martial arts career, my outlook, my perspective of the art. And it really gave me a good understanding, unfortunately, of the politics and the ego that is within the art, And so there were a lot of lessons learned there, some that, I don't think students should ever have to be exposed to when it comes to the business and politics and ego of it. But it was a good experience for me, and it has shaped a lot of how I teach, how I run a studio, how I interact with other schools and associations and lineages and stuff, and I think it's all been a benefit to me. But yeah, it's tough to have to learn those lessons the hard way. When you go into a school and you're a beginner and you don't know all this political side of things, and then all of a sudden you're removed from your school. It's heartbreaking. You're like, where do I go now? And yeah, that's kind of a quick rundown of it, I guess.
Yeah, it's always been curious to me that people want to, one, I'm very big on cross training. I understand that it's not everybody's cup of tea, and it's not good for everybody. And there is a certain, I would say that there's a timing for it. Brand new beginners, I don't think should be cross training, because it can get very, very confusing very, very quickly, especially if you're in art, doing multiple arts that are similar. But I've never quite truly understand the schools and the teachers where they're like, oh, well, you can't go to any other schools, you can't look at any other teachers, you can't do this or that. And I see that for some, there's that insecurity that, oh, well, you're going to steal your students or something like that. I've always been of the mind that if someone can steal your student, they were never really your student. So, if you're teaching quality, and you've got the right characteristics, and you're doing things in the quote unquote right way, your students aren't going to want to leave and want to go somewhere else. I think that I heard this on another interview, and someone said something along the lines of like the greatest question that you can have in martial arts is why, and always asking why to everything. And I never saw that as a form of disrespect. Maybe the way that it gets phrased, or maybe in the context. If you're asking your instructor, oh, why don't I have my black belt yet? Okay, that's not a that's not a good way to go about it. But if you're trying to learn a technique or form or something like that, then asking why, I think, is important. So I'm going to kind of out myself here, or whatever. If people have an issue, they know where to find me on the internet. But so one of my favorite forms is Bookset, and most of the EPAC schools don't teach it. I know a lot of the Tracy schools still teach it, but I really like the form. But I've never really gotten a clear answer about uh, the why of why we do certain movements in the form or anything like that. So uh, if someone knows, go go ahead and hit me up, or get on the show and explain it to me, because I would really like to know. I mean, I love the form and love doing it, but I would like to understand why we're doing the movements that are in it. So that's just why is a good thing. Uh, then there was another thing that came to mind as you were talking, that another thing that I had heard on an interview was someone say that uh, don't be afraid to quit. And he didn't mean, oh, well, this particular art is getting hard, now I'm going to quit doing it. It was all right. So we had looks like we had some technical difficulties, as happens sometimes, but through my seamless audio and video editing skills, no one will ever notice. So so I believe I was talking about, I had heard something along the lines of not being afraid to quit. And what they were talking about was not that oh, this art or this form or whatever it is I'm doing is getting too hard, so I'm going to stop doing it. It was more meaning that uh, don't have this kind of blind loyalty to a school or to a teacher. If a particular school or a teacher or something is not meeting your needs, then don't be afraid to say, hey, I need to find a different teacher, I need to find a different school, or need to find a different art or something like that. Or maybe I need to take a little break for my mental health, or something along those lines. Life gets in the way, whatever the case may be. And it's okay to say, okay, I need to step away from this place or this person, or I need to take this time away. And then once you can kind of recharge or get whatever it is you need, you find a school or a teacher or something that fits your need, then you can pick back up, or move, or whatever it is that you got to do. And I think there's a lot of people that are kind of afraid to do that, to ask the why, or to quit just accepting, okay, well, we do these techniques or we do this thing this way because that's what we do. And not be afraid to say, you know what, I don't want to keep doing things that way. Hey, teacher, can I get the why? And if you're not getting the right answer, then maybe it's time to move on. So
Yeah, to the why thing, it's like, especially in an art that's supposed to be tailored to the individual. If you don't understand the why behind what you're doing, then how can you truly adapt that to you and to your body and to your whatever your fighting style, to your needs, to your situation. The why is really important. And to what you were saying earlier, it's like if an instructor knows their stuff and they're confident in that, they like the guys I train with now, they're like, hey, everyone's welcome here, but you're free to go to the seminars. You don't need to tell me. Just go train with whoever you want. Like, if they're confident and they know their stuff, they're not going to have a problem with you training with other people, cross training, going to seminars, whatever it may be. And I think something that a lot of instructors don't think about, which is not fair to their student, and to go along with what you were just saying, is especially if you're not a club, if you're a school, a commercial school that's charging your students are consumers. They don't owe you any more loyalty or anything other than beyond paying their monthly tuition. Obviously you develop relationships with some students, and the longer you're with an instructor, you start to have some loyalty towards them and some respect for them and stuff. But at the end of the day, especially coming up through the ranks, a student's a consumer. You're providing a service for that student, and if they want to leave, like, they should be able to leave. If they want to go, the thing that always cracked me up was when an instructor says you can't go train somewhere else. It's like, man, if I am paying you and I am following all the rules while I'm under your roof, you have no right telling me what I do outside of your studio. I am paying you for a service, and you give me that service. I give you a check. I follow your rules and everything when I'm in the studio. And anyone that tries to control people beyond that, I think is a real problem. And I think it's the quickest way to lose students and to ruin your business, really.
No, I agree 100%. There are a lot of instructors out there that feel like their students uh, owe them something, and owe their lives and their firstborns and all this other kind of kind of nonsense. But uh, no, it's not the case. There is a give and take between the teacher and the student, and it's more equal than some instructors and students would like to believe. So very nice, very nice. So going with the back to the teaching part of it. When did one, were you always interested in the teaching aspect, or was it thrust upon you? And kind of how did that all start out?
Yeah, so I started like assisting with class. So I didn't start training till I was like 21, I think. So I was an adult 2021 when I started training. And I started like assisting with classes when I was like a green belt or something, right before I got my brown belt. And I was kind of, pushed into teaching and stuff. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole you can go down about pushing students to teach or requiring them to teach and stuff. But so I was kind of pushed into it, but I enjoyed it. I've said before, I'm kind of introverted. It's a bit of a struggle to be in front of a class of people at first, and even now I'm still very introverted and tend to be shy. But when I'm up in front of a class or a seminar, or if I'm teaching or talking about Kenpo, I'm fine. It's like a switch flips. But it was good. It was being pushed to teach was good because it helped me get out of that outside my comfort zone and learn to interact with people and stuff. And so by the time I was a black belt, I was running all classes and actually helping run a school. And the instructor there was looking at opening another location that he wanted me to run prior to us having a falling out. So teaching something I've always enjoyed and always been interested in and done. After leaving that school and before finding another home, kind of bounced around to a couple schools and not really finding anything we liked. Myself and some training partners that had all left started our own kind of club where we were just training. We ended up with like a group of, I don't know, I think a dozen black belts that had all left that same school or that same lineage, and we were all just training together, and we were kind of teaching each other, and had some interest from other people that came in that were beginners or from black belts in different styles that we started teaching. And that was kind of my experience of teaching outside of somebody else's studio. And that ultimately, a few years later, would lead to myself and a old training partner opening a commercial studio. So it's always been an interest, and we kind of had a series of events that allowed things to fall into place to start teaching on our own. And then again, finding an instructor that was more open and supportive of that was helpful, because then we were very much encouraged to open a studio and open a commercial studio and start teaching on a larger scale. And that opened up to opportunities to teach seminars and teach internationally, and teach on a much kind of larger stage to higher ranks, and which has all been a really great experience too. So it's it's always been something I've enjoyed doing. It just kind of was a typical process, I guess, of getting there and getting to teaching the way that I do now. So yeah.
So how has your teaching changed over the years? Are there things that you do now that you wish you would have done early on in the teaching, and vice versa? Are there things that maybe you used to do that you'd like to come back? And I guess not just limiting it to the teaching, but just in your training in general. Are there things that maybe you used to do that you wish would make a comeback?
No, so coming from a school that was very closed off and very old school in how they taught, I've broken away from that. And basically, when we opened a commercial studio, we said we wanted to take everything that we loved from other studios that we had been to and experienced, whether they be Kenpo studios or jiu-jitsu schools. We want to take everything that we loved and incorporate it into what we did and how we ran a studio and how we taught. And we want to get rid of everything that we hated about kind of the way that we had come up through the ranks at some of the local schools here, and their methods of everything from how they would run drills to how they would address the instructor and stuff. So, now I think I'm probably a little bit more laid back with how I teach. And at the moment, I just run a club. I teach mostly black belts now. I got a couple of colored belts, but so it's a little bit different than when you're training, teaching a class of 20 or 30 kids that range and rank and everything. So that alone, I teach differently now than even I do when I have my commercial studio. But with all that being said, I don't. I try not to teach the system the way that it was taught to me initially, because I think one issue, and this is something that I get, is controversial. I guess I get people in the comments on videos I post all the time, that I think that the way that Kenpo is traditionally taught, at least in my area, I know it's different everywhere, and the West Coast teaches differently than the East Coast, but in the Northeast where I'm from, and not all, but the vast majority of schools teach in very similar ways, and it's not even just by the book. It's hard to explain, but it's the drills that they run. It's the way that they conduct class, the way that they structure everything. It's just very outdated. It's like very stuck in the 1980s. I mean, right down to how they take payments and how they check attendance and stuff. It's like, it's so, schools that don't even have a computer, and it's just so outdated. And they teach the same way. They're still teaching drills that they were using in the 1980s, and some have validity, some don't. But when you take into consideration the way that the martial arts as a whole have changed over the last 30 years, and you went from American Kenpo being one of the top self-defense martial arts to now people saying it's a joke because of MMA and jiu-jitsu and all this stuff. I think that people need to change up how they're teaching and how they're running drills, and you can't just do techniques on a body without having a responsive, training partner. You can't just do stuff in the air. You can't just hit, century focus pads, those little square pads. Like, you need to do actual mitt work. You need to pressure test a little bit. And even when people talk about sparring, I hear people talk about sparring all the time. It's like, well, if you're point sparring with the century headgear and stuff, sorry, that's not the same as like when you spar Muay Thai, when you spar Dutch kickboxing and you make some contact and you have this point sparring stuff. It's all outdated. And a lot of people see my videos and make all these comments, and it's like, yeah, man, I don't post everything that I do, all my training method. I don't post my classes and stuff. It's not what my videos are intended to be showing. But those are the types of things that I try and do differently now. I try and even the way I teach Kenpo principles and concepts, it's like, if we're just teaching techniques by the book and we're not going into depth, into the whys, into the principles, into the how this works, why I can bend this rule as long as I'm doing this to replace it. Like, if we're not getting into that, then all we're doing is we're just teaching people that mimic how we move. That's it. And teaching somebody how to mimic what you do without them understanding, a deep understanding of how to make that stuff work in a real situation, you're doing your students a disservice. It's not useful to them. And even by teaching techniques by the book and just drilling techniques over and over again, and all respect to everyone, including Mr. Parker, who said, oh, you can take move number 3 from technique 2 and put it with move number 5 from technique 10. Yeah, man, but that takes a long time to get there. That's a whole, because you have a Rolodex in your mind of techniques, and oh, here comes a right straight punch. Which one do I do? Like, Dave Pantano is one of the instructors that I work with, and the way that he teaches his classes, it's just, I won't get into it. If you want to reach out to him and ask him, but the way he teaches is brilliant, and it's not just techniques, it's aspects of techniques, but it's really teaching with principles of Kenpo and letting people formulate and build their own technique, build their own response to an attack, and I think that's really how we need to be teaching. It's what I try and do, and just trying to get away from the whole, step back, hammer, kick, block, or hammer, kick, chop, or whatever, and just doing everything by the numbers, like 1, 2, 3. It's just, yeah, I get as a white belt, maybe you need that, fine. But again, I train mostly black belts now. And the problem is that I still see so many people at black belt level training the same way that they were taught when they were a white belt. And that's a problem. We should be growing, evolving, and maturing in our art as we go up through the ranks. And I think a lot of schools and a lot of people don't really do that effectively. Honestly, sorry.
No, no, I am, I am 100%, 150, 200% with you on all of those things. It's always been kind of funny to me that Ed Parker is known for continually evolving the art. I mean, up until the day he died, Kempo was always changing and evolving. But yet there are still a lot of Kempo practitioners that are uh, still kind of stuck in, oh, well, this is the way that we did it when I did it with Ed Parker, and how dare you change it, or how you dare you do anything different. And it's like, wait a second, he was known for continually changing, so why are we not changing? And I get it that we're not changing for the sake of changing, but times change, attitudes change, strategies change, all of these different things change. And a person on the street today is going to be a little bit different than someone, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The tactics, the techniques, the weapons, the laws, all of these things change. And Kempo, or well, any martial art has to change along with it. I mean, okay, when a lot of these arts were created, people had swords and things like that. And uh yeah yeah, for the most part, I'm gonna say it's fairly safe to say that you're not going to encounter somebody with a sword, either them having one or you having one. So um that has to change. Not to say that we shouldn't still train those things, but we have to understand the context, and maybe put a little bit, if we're using this art for self-defense, then okay, we're going to put a little more weight on the knife and gun defenses than we are the sword and nunchaku defenses. So um yeah, that's always funny. And then with the sparring, uh yeah, there's a lot of people that get involved in the martial arts, and for all kinds of reasons, but I guess at the core, it is about combat, it is about war. And yet when it comes sparring night, a lot of folks have other things to do that night. And it's kind of interesting to me. It's like, well, you're training to fight and you don't want to fight. It's, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. And yeah, I've trained with people, not just in Kempo, but in other arts that are black belts and have been in the arts for a long time, and they're not continually trying to work. They're just doing techniques and the way they do them in the book. And it's not always going to be it's not always going to be the way it is in the book. It actually will never it almost never is that way. I've talked to a lot of people over the years, and uh I don't think I've one of the common things that I always hear is that, oh, well, anytime I've had to use my Kenpo in a real life situation, I've never been able to do a technique all the way through. Uh, Most pretty much have never gotten past the first or second move in any technique, and uh, but yet there's so many people that are just so married to the way that it's done in the book, and it's like, no, you have to experiment with it. You have to see that, oh, okay, I hit him with this reverse punch and that didn't take him down. Okay, where are we going next? And for those that are doing Kenpo for that self-defense aspect, if they're not continually asking those questions and working on those different scenarios and all those different angles, then I think they're doing themselves a disservice. So
Yeah. And, back to what you were saying about how, the person you encounter on the street now is going to be different than, what they might do is going to be different than it was years ago. And then what you're saying about like encountering a sword and not being worried about that, like I'll take that even a step further to I'm not worried about encountering a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt on the street and getting into a fight with them or being attacked by one. People are like, oh, try that on a Jiu-Jitsu guy. Man, I know a lot of Jiu-Jitsu guys, black belts, brown belts, purple belts. I'm not worried about those guys. Those guys aren't out looking for fights. I'm worried about the guy that took just enough MMA classes to be dangerous, but not have that level of control or that level of I don't need to prove myself. Just like I'm not too worried about encountering a sword on the street. I'm not too worried about encountering a black belt that's from jiu-jitsu or something. It's not. I always tell people, like, look, if you find yourself fighting a jiu-jitsu black belt, you probably did something wrong. You probably crossed a line, because I don't know any that are out looking for street fights, and but yes, there are a lot of people out there now that have some level of training. They know enough to be dangerous, but not they still have something. They think they have something to prove, so they're out there causing trouble, and that's more what I worry about, and that's something that I think Kenpo does still have an answer for. Again, if your training methods reflect that. There are some techniques in the system that I think are a little outdated or that I think are misunderstood in how the attack is applied. And it's not to say that there aren't lessons within there or that we should get rid of those techniques from the system. But I think that they could be taught a little bit differently, or at least some emphasis can be put on some different points to make them a little bit more realistic for what we might encounter with the modern climate and with the modern, threat of people that have trained combat sports, but still think they have something to prove, but maybe haven't hit that level of rank or of proficiency or experience in their art that keeps them from looking for trouble. Because it's like, I know I'm not out looking for fights. I don't think most black belts are, but especially in those systems, even Muay Thai, a good Muay Thai fighter that's fought in the ring and stuff, they don't need to prove that they can fight. They've already done that, So I'm not too worried about encountering them.
exactly. I got to go to work in the morning, so I don't have time for for picking fights. So I got to go to work or I got to go to jiu-jitsu in the morning. So yeah, I don't. I'm a lover, not a fighter. So all right. So something that I've started asking my guests, since there is not a universal standard for what it means to be a black belt, what it takes to earn a black belt, what it means to once you've reached black belt, what it means to keep your black belt or be worthy of being a black belt. I've started asking my guests in their own opinion, in their own kind of thought processes, what would you say does it mean to be a black belt, or any kind of avenue of surrounding a black belt? There isn't any kind of right or wrong answers. I just kind of want to get a collection of what people's thoughts are on that.
Man, I don't know. That's a tough one because, again, like I think I have a different approach than most people. Like, because I see the techniques in the system as familiar training tools. It's something that if we all go to a seminar and somebody says five swords, we all know what five swords is. is a tool that I could use now to teach a specific principle or concept off of, because everyone is familiar with what that technique is. But that's all it is. It's a training tool to me. It's a template. It's something that everyone's familiar with. So I think it's important to know those techniques in the system for the sake of working with other people. But beyond that, I almost just like you said, just because you collected 154 techniques doesn't make you a black belt in my mind. It's having the understanding and being able to apply the principles and concepts of Kenpo. Having that proficiency is what's most important to me. I would rather see somebody have a deep understanding of those principles and concepts, be able to apply them, be able to convey that information to teach those principles and concepts. I'd rather somebody have those skills than have 154 techniques. Like I say, it's not to say that there's no value in them, but I know a lot of people wearing black belts that can do all the techniques by the numbers, by the book, but they couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper bag. And then I know a lot of people that if you say a technique name, they're like, I don't know, but you say right straight punch and they will pull out a technique or parts of techniques and they will light that person up and defend themselves more effectively than people that have way more stripes on their belts. So to me, it's the understanding. It's having a deep understanding of the art and the principles and concepts, and having that knowledge is what's most important to me. Because man, I've seen some guys with a lot of red on their belt that just don't have a very thorough understanding. And going back to my first instructor, it's like, man, I don't know why you would want the weight of that belt and the responsibility that comes with it if you don't have that understanding. But some people do, and it's meaningless without the knowledge to back it up and the ability to apply that knowledge. So, yeah, I guess that would be my best answer. It's not so much the techniques or the forms; it's the knowledge and the ability to apply it, even outside of those prescribed movements that are within the system.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Once again, yeah, it's funny that there are a lot of people that are chasing those stripes, chasing those bars, and it's confounding to me because there's many. I've been in the martial arts, gosh, well, we'll say over 30 years at this point, and I still get imposter syndrome. I feel. I mean, I'm not very high up or anything, but I've been around the block. I've seen a few things. I've learned a few things, but there's still many days where I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but yet that's my own viewpoint. Somebody else on the outside maybe like, oh my, like, oh, like you know this technique, or I guess I should say, there'll be times where I'm teaching or assisting or something with somebody, and I'm going through these things, and I may be kind of questioning myself, but that person that I'm teaching is picking up that, oh well, this person knows more about this than I do, and uh, sometimes it's kind of easy to lose sight of that. But I couldn't imagine being in a position where someone's putting some red on my belt, and I don't understand half of the techniques, or I can't do. I guess it's not always about being able to perform it, but understanding it, and even if you don't understand everything, knowing how to get those answers and how to find those answers. And yeah, there's a lot of teachers out there that are just more interested in the quote unquote status uh, than than the actual knowledge and growing and spreading the art. So yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. So we are flying through our time here today. So we're going to move on to our lightning round here. That's got a few little questions as we head towards wrapping up. So the first question being, do you have a favorite technique?
Um, I guess if I had to pick one off the top of my head, the snapping twig with the extension. I think that's fun to do.
Very nice, very nice. Yes, well, one of my what I like to call the Kenpo All Stars. It's a technique that seems to be in every version of Kenpo, at least that I've been exposed to. And yeah, snapping twigs is definitely one of those. Thundering hammer, five swords, of course. I like to tell the story that one of my previous guests wasn't even a Kenpo practitioner, but he, as we were talking, he knew five swords, and he was like, "Oh, I teach five swords to my students," and it was like that's a sign of a good technique if non Kempo people are using it. So I like it. I like it. All right. Next question: do you have a favorite form and or set?
I'm not real big on forms. I kind of like three. I've liked three since Mr. Tatum showed it as a mass attack. It just gives a little more depth to it, makes it a little more fun to practice and teach that way. But yeah,
Oh, good, good. I like it. All right. Next question: do you have a favorite weapon?
martial arts weapon? No,
Anything at all that you consider a weapon?
I'm a firearms guy. Before I got into martial arts, I did competitive shooting, so that's my weapon of choice is firearms. That's it.
Very, very nice.
That
And
or if I do more martial arts, I like the karambit. But
oh, very nice, very nice, very nice. Now, I'm not not much of a gun guy, but a particular pistol or rifle or whatnot that you like.
I shoot mostly pistol. I like rifle too, but I've competed in pistol. Yeah, more modern, automatic pistols and stuff. Not revolvers. I'm not a fan of revolvers.
Very nice, very nice. All right. Next question: if there's anyone that you could train with, living or dead, fictional or non-fictional, besides Ed Parker, who would that be?
Oh man, I never thought about that one. Uh, I don't know, man. I like Jason Statham. I think him or
Nice,
Michael J. White. Believe it or not, yeah,
nice.
Statham or Michael J. White. I like how those guys. I like how they choreograph stuff. It's for the movies, but there's a certain level of realism to a lot of their fight scenes and stuff, and they're real martial artists in the movies and stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. If I say Ed Parker or something, I feel like that's a little too cliche. So I'd
Well,
go with one
because
of
this
those
is
guys. I think.
well, when I started the show and I started asking that question, because this is primarily a Kempo show, of course, everybody was said Ed Parker. So I realized that I needed to make it a little bit harder. So whenever I interview a Kempo person, I take Ed Parker off the table because it's a Kempo show. That's kind of a given. So
Yeah,
I got a lot more interesting answers once I took Ed Parker off the table. So.
yeah. I don't know. I think Statham is kind of underrated. I don't hear too many people talk about him, but I think he's a really good martial artist, and his movies are basically all the same storyline, which is gets old, gets old. But I think he's got some good fight scenes and some good skills and stuff. So I think he'd be fun to train with.
Nice, nice. Yeah, there's a comedian that has a joke about Statham, and it's like, oh, well, all of his movies are an occupation. So if you need to come up with a new Statham movie, just find an occupation. So he's been a
Yeah.
mechanic, a beekeeper, a transporter. So
Yep.
he's
That's
gonna
true.
the next one's gonna be the librarian or something, and so I like that. I like that. All right. Next question. What is something that always motivates you to train and or something that you'd like to put out for others to motivate them to train? So I use the example of the movie Rocky Four. He's out there training and the music's going, the training montage is going. What would be something like that? Well, whenever I see that, that gets me ready to hit the mats and do what I need to do. So, what is something like that for you, or something that you'd like to put out for others to motivate them to train?
whether it's my students, it's stuff I put on the internet, or if it's me when I'm teaching a seminar. Uh, it's everything we talked about today. The fact that I think that the methods that are used to teach, or even just how people view Kenpo now, is outdated and becoming problematic. So it's just being able to try and give people a different perspective from which to view the art of Kenpo, and to kind of think differently about it and go down some different rabbit holes than they might normally go down. That's what motivates me when I'm teaching my students here. I'm always trying to get them to look at things from a different perspective and look at their techniques a little differently than how they were taught by the book. When I post a video online, I'm trying to get other black belts to look at the art a little bit differently and change their perspective and their thought process and their approach to the techniques. And it's the same thing when I teach a seminar. I try and bring something different, a little bit different way of thinking about usually not a technique, but a principle or a concept, and how it can be applied, to get other black belts to start, trying to, again, not just look at the technique, but look at how they can apply things a little bit differently, whether it's how they apply a technique, a basic, or a principle or concept. So, yeah, I think just opening people's eyes to different ways to approach this art, I think, is kind of what motivates me in everything I do within the art.
Very nice, very nice. All right, so we are at our final piece of business today, and that is our shameless self-promotion. So you can plug anything that you'd like, or if there's anything that you hadn't said that you wanted to make sure to get out there, you now have the floor, and then we will close out from there.
Oh man, no, I don't know. I think we've said a lot today. I host an event here every year, Boston Tea Party, which is normally happens in the spring. This year it'll probably happen in the fall because we have some other big projects going on that we're gonna tie in with that event. But I always post about that online on my Facebook and stuff. And it's that whole event started because I was able to travel all over the country and to Europe and stuff, and train with instructors that I never thought possible. A lot of really great instructors that I want others to be able to train with, but not everyone has the money to be flying all over the place and train with these guys. So I thought I'll bring them here to my local area in the Northeast, and provide an opportunity for people to train with all these other great instructors that I've benefited from training with. So we've kept that going on now, pretty much every year with the exception of COVID. So it's something that we try and keep very affordable. We try to make it so that money isn't a factor, because we know that some people do travel and have to pay for flights and hotels. So depending on the size of the event or the number of instructors, it's usually under $200. It's $199 to $199 every year. And it's really just to give people opportunity to train with great instructors and come out and meet new people and help kind of build the community, within the local Kenpo community here. And so I always, it's an open invitation to anybody from any style, any lineage. So I guess that's the only plug that I can put out there, is just, once we put some information out for that, it's open to everyone. Everyone's welcome, and it's always a great time with some awesome instructors.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I'll have to we'll keep our eyes open for that. So awesome. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time to be on and sharing your story, and looking forward to all the great things that you're working on, and we'll definitely keep an eye on what you're doing. But yeah, I just thank you enough, and I think the listeners and now viewers, I guess, will be able to enjoy. And yeah, just once again, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you for asking me on. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Right on. Thank you.